Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
Data tables are a handy way to change one or two variables within a formula to view and compare the different possible results in a comparison table. You can create either single variable data tables or double variable data tables. For example, you can create a single variable data table that computes and compares the possible different loan payment amounts for a loan based on different interest rates. Using the same example, you could also create a double variable data table that displays the different loan payments for various interest rates and differing term lengths. When you create a data table, you must organize it in a specific way based on whether it is a single variable data table or a double variable data table. All data tables consist of three basic parts: an input column or row, or both if you're creating a double variable data table, an output column or output row, or both if you're creating a double variable data table, and the formula to evaluate in the data table. You must enter the formula variables to modify in the data table as separate cell references in the evaluated formula. If needed, you can create a small table for the cells to which the data table's formula refers, unless you already have cells to which you can refer for that purpose within the worksheet. In a single variable data table, you can arrange the data table in either a columnar layout or a row layout. In the column style, you place the formula to evaluate at the top of the output column, which is the rightmost of the two columns. The left column is then the input column that contains all the possible values to evaluate for the variable reference in the formula. In the row style, you place the formula to evaluate in the cell to the left of the output row, which is the bottommost of the two rows. The top row is the input row, which contains all the possible values to evaluate for the evaluated formula's variable reference. In double variable data tables, there is only one way to lay out the data table. You must create both an input column and an input row. In a double variable data table, the formula to evaluate is then placed at the top of the input column and to the left of the input row. The square that extends down and to the right from there is the output grid, where the various outcomes of the evaluated formula appear for the different variable intersections from the input column and the input row. To create the data table, select the cell range that includes the formula being evaluated, the input columns and/or rows, and the output columns and/or rows. Then click the What If Analysis button in the Forecast button group on the Data tab of the ribbon. Then choose the Data Table command from the drop-down menu to open the Data Table dialog box. Next, click into the Row Input Cell text box and then select the cell in the worksheet that represents the changing variable shown in the input row if you have one. Then click into the Column Input Cell text box and select the cell in your worksheet that represents the variable that is changing in the input column if you have one. In a single variable data table, you will only fill in one of these two boxes. The one you choose depends on whether you created the data table using a column layout or a row layout. In a double variable data table, you must fill in both boxes, indicating which cell reference to use for the input column and which cell reference to use for the input row. When you are done, click the OK button in the Data Table dialog box to fill the data table with output information based on the values you placed into your input columns and/or rows. Then you can adjust the values in the input columns and/or input rows in your data table to view the various possible outcomes of the evaluated formula.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.